Well, welcome everyone to tonight's group coaching telecast, broadcast, Zoom meeting. This is one that is, I've actually been teaching for a while. It's called Financial Battleship, Why and How. And again, our goal with these is to deliver some great content, things that are, we've been part of our 25-year success, 25 plus year actually success as a coaching company. And the idea of a financial battleship actually came from one of my mentors many years ago, who asked me some tough questions about my company at the time and about whether I felt like I could withstand or torpedo hit, to use a metaphor. And the idea behind the battleship is that it's a big, strong boat and can basically withstand like a massive, hit, and might list a little bit, but it's going to basically keep on chugging and keep on going. Whereas, if you had a small boat and you took a hit, it would just, disintegrate and you'd have nothing left. So the idea behind a financial battleship is to have enough resources, financially speaking, so that you can withstand some of the crisis and some of the challenges that come on. And again, from an energetic standpoint, when Einstein said that E equals mc squared and energy and mass or matter were interchangeable, of course you get speed of light squared. We realize that, we're definitely dealing with a sine wave here energetically with life and business and relationships and otherwise. So, basically a battleship was designed to withstand this side of a sine wave so that you have this other side coming back up, right? And that is the great dichotomy of life and of business and so on, right? This particular video is being taped right in the midst of a very strange time in human history, the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's rather fitting, actually, that we're doing this now in the midst of this, even though we had this planned months and months and months ago to share these ideas with you tonight. It's rather interesting because a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space are literally either shut down or at 10, 25, maybe 50% of capacity if they're lucky. Some big businesses have been hit even harder. If you're watching this video way in the future, there's some businesses that are down 80, 90%. Big businesses have been around for a long time. And there's government bailouts going on, which our grandchildren's grandchildren will be paying for. And it's a really interesting time. But it's a timely discussion because those with a financial battleship are actually doing quite well and are not that stressed out and are, doing things and planning for the future. Those that do not have a financial battleship are scrambling. And they're looking for loans and government handouts and, all kinds of things, right? So one of the big pieces and the difference between the people that are doing well in the crisis and people that don't is the quality of their decisions. And the quality of your decision can definitely be linked to whether you're, more in your frontal cortex, your executive decision-making center, or whether you're under stress. You will definitely, any human will go back into more of a limbic or midbrain type behavior pattern, which is, a thinking pattern that we share with our genetic ancestors that are not so evolved as we are, back in the reptilian, actually, sort of more fight or flight or freeze type, mindset. My experience from having been there at times in my life, it's not the place you want to be staying very long. You don't make great decisions when you're in your limbic system and your midbrain. And so you want to definitely look at ways to move beyond that. So again, the idea of a financial battleship, when you've got the kind of reserves that we're going to offer tonight and lay out a plan for why you want this and also the how, then it's pretty straightforward that those that have that financial battleship are not as stressed because they have reserves. They're not worried about whether they can put food on the table or whether they can keep up their mortgage payments or other things like that. They have a battleship, a large financial battleship that allows them to do that. And I will offer this, you guys, they've earned the right to have that battleship. This is not a trust fund situation where somebody was just gifted it, certainly not in my case. I had to earn the right to do this. And I'm quite thankful and grateful and humbled that I have had the mentoring and the guidance and coaching that gave me the mindset that I'm sharing with you tonight, as well as the hows and the wherewithal to stick with the plan that I created a long time ago, 30 years ago, that has allowed us to sit in this situation and be quite comfortable and be able to plan for the future. So there's two kind of subcategories we're going to talk about tonight. One is what I call the behind the veil stuff, which is kind of in the quantum world, in the energetic world, if you will. Not to get new agey or too airy foo-foo about this, but there definitely is in our full circle world an energetic component to everything in life, relationships and business and money and so on. So we definitely want to talk about that piece because that sets the stage for the other piece, which is the physical world, which is the world that most people inhabit, most of the time. And I want to make a distinction between those two, the quantum world, the behind the veil, if you will, world, and the in front of the veil, or the physical world. All right. So one of the first things we want to talk about when we're talking about behind the veil is we want to be talking about your relationship with money and what money is. Okay. So we've got a much more in-depth program on this, but I want to just sort of hit some of the highlights just to make sure that you're getting some context for this, because without this context and this awareness of what money is, I think that it would be more difficult for you to wrestle with the mindset of going ahead with the plan that I want to offer you tonight. So again, we're looking at the why you want this to withstand a financial crisis or a hit, a lawsuit, loss of a key team member, revenue collapses for various sort of reasons. So the why is hopefully transparent. You want stability to your life, you want stability to your business, and you want to have that psychology of being able to stay in your frontal cortex to make good decisions. So we're going to talk about the how now, and part of that, step one, is your relationship with money as it relates to behind the veil. So let's talk about what money is. And money is really just an exchange tool, right? It is something that in the days of old, the barter system was very common, where you would have, say, a carpenter and somebody who raised chickens. And the carpenter wanted to have some chickens, for dinners and so on, and so would make a deal to build a chicken coop for the person with the chickens. And then they had to come to some sort of a barter arrangement about, how many chickens a chicken coop was worth, to use that example, right? You would have a wheat farmer that would want to, get vegetables from somebody who grew vegetable gardens. And so there was lots of discussions about, how many sheaves of wheat it would take to get so many tomatoes and so many carrots and so many potatoes. And so it was quite a complex system, quite frankly, and there was no real standard to it. So what happened is they found a simpler way to do it, which was initially represented by gold coins. Gold is one of those standards that's been around throughout time and history. And by the way, if you'd like a good reference on this, I highly recommend Neil Ferguson's book called The Ascent of Money. Will give you the entire history of money. And money is basically a man-made thing, or a human-made thing. It doesn't exist in the natural world. It's something we created, but we created literally the gold coin standard initially in order to simplify the barter process. It was also a way to stockpile energy, because one of the challenges of being, say, a wheat farmer was, you had wheat and you had a harvest in the fall, so you were, from a barter standpoint, very, very wealthy for a period of time. But if you tried to stockpile, the commodity called wheat, it would often rot and go bad. And then, you're left kind of not having anything to barter with or buy with in, say, the middle of the winter. So by being able to sell all of your wheat and stockpile it as coins, you were then able to redistribute those coins, over time. So it was a simplification process, then it was a storage process. So that's how it started. It turned into, gold coins were turned into money. I think this actually started in Italy in the 1500s. Ferguson's book does a better job of it than me. But the idea behind this, you guys, is that it is a human-made process. It is a simplification of the oldest exchange model in the world. And so really all money represents is just an exchange of time and talent, an exchange of something that you've turned into a service or a product that other humans value. And as a result of that, you're able to exchange it for money. So again, it's interesting because I remember as a kid, money doesn't grow on trees and money doesn't come out of thin air. Well, actually it does, because money is just again, as I said, an exchange of services and or products that you've delivered that are something that somebody else in society deems valuable, and they're willing to give you money for that. So it is literally a representation of your time and talent as it relates to your mind, your heart, and your body, being able to create that. So that is something that doesn't exist without your mind, heart, and body going to work to find a way to be productive, right? And the oldest rule in economics is that the more productive you are, the more revenue that you create, as long as your productivity is something that's valued in the culture. And the value of things in the culture, change over time, right? So right now, at this particular stage in human history, sporting events are quite highly revered. That may change with the COVID crisis, quite frankly, as professional sports go through some massive shifts with big auditoriums and big audiences literally not being allowed. So that's interesting. But if you go back through human history, athletics was largely an amateur type experience, and they weren't really that well compensated. It was more just the pride of victory. Whereas now, the pride of victory can make you $55 million a year. right? So again, the idea behind this is you have a product or service that's revered to a degree in the culture. The more productive you are with that product or service, the more revenue you will generate, the more exchange you have, and the more money you have, right? So again, at some very simplistic level to you guys, I want to just remind you that, all energy, this desk, this noodle, money is just energy. E equals MC squared. It is just energy, and it can be literally created out of thin air relative to having a good idea, working on it from your heart, and with your skills, with your physical prowess or physical body allows you to do that. So that's really just a backdrop, your view of money and your relationship with money around that. Because if you come from a scarcity mindset, which I grew up with based upon how I was raised as a child, then you will realize that you might want to try and hoard things. You might want to try and get your little share, and you might not want to plan for the future. You might not be into delayed gratification, which is something that is a really key construct here in order to build a battleship. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So again, reviewing your relationship with money is really important. Talking to your coach about that relationship and working through some details on that would be extremely wise if you don't feel like it is as robust as it could be, as solid as it could be, okay? Step two then, and we're still behind the veil here, okay? We haven't really gone into the physical world yet. We're just talking about how to create the how of the physical world. Is really what we're talking about here is having a plan. Okay, because if you do not have a plan for exactly how you're going to use the money that you've exchanged for your time and talent, your products or services that you've brought to the world that are of value to someone else in the culture, if you don't have a plan for that, then you're literally at the whimsical nature of the universe. Okay, and having a plan activates, the law of attraction, and you can actually draw your future towards you by clearly stating exactly what it is. Then you can take whatever your product or service is and you can take it down into a debt of service. So whether it is a chiropractic adjustment that you get paid $50 for, or it's a widget that you produce that brings you $5 for the profit, or it's a real estate transaction that you get paid a percentage of, and your average of your sales is $15,000 or whatever, you can take that exact number, and once you've gone and made your plan for what you would love your life to look like, and we advocate for a 6-part model, which is based upon 6 categories or distinctions for the energy called money, right? Number 1 is savings. Number 2 is taxes. Number 3 is lifestyle. Number 4 is big rocks. Number 5 is debt reduction. And number 6 is any professional or office costs it takes to drive that, okay? And you can literally go through and say, okay, this is where I would like how much I would like to put into savings, how much I need to save for taxes, what I would like my lifestyle budget to be, which, by the way, there's another distinction I want to be sure we bring up early, is that every wealthy person I've ever interacted with or studied with always lives on some form of a budget. They have an intention or a plan for what it is that they want to live their life like, what kind of a house they want to live in, whether they rent it or buy it and have a mortgage or not, what kind of a car they want to drive, what kind of food they want to eat, whether it's organic or not, how much it costs to do that. Obviously, the size of the home would predicate things like your taxes, property taxes. It would predicate things like how much it costs to heat or cool the thing, and so on and so forth. So creating a plan, what we call your dream lifestyle, is really an important step because it allows you to know how much money you would even need in order to live your life in your authentic ideal. And if you have not done that step, I highly advocate that you do that step. Certainly if you're already a member of the Full Circle family, there's a very important sheet we call the Bliss sheet, the Business Life Plan Intention sheet, which is really what we're talking about here, okay? So that plan allows you to get crystal clear, and let's just, I'm picking just a random number, that say it costs $150,000 a year for you to live your life in your ideal based upon those 6 categories I mentioned earlier. Well, now what you want to do then is say, okay, what is my average fee for service? Okay, whether it's a $15,000 on average real estate commission, or whether it's selling a $5 widget, or it's selling a $50 chiropractic adjustment, whatever it is, whatever form it takes, you can do the math and divide that number, that quantified number, into this fictional number I just made up, 150,000, and you can know exactly how many widgets you need to sell, or how many chiropractic adjustments you need to do, or how many real estate, commission deals you need to run in order to live your life in your authentic ideal. And I would offer everybody deserves to live their life in their authentic ideal. Some people miss that. It's in my opinion, a God-given right. But a lot of people have not taken the time to actually clearly elucidate to the universe what they want their life to look like. Absolutely crucial step. activating the law of attraction, getting clear, because you can't hit a target you can't see. So let's use the real estate example of an average real estate commission of $15,000. Where if it only costs you $150,000 to live your life in your ideal, I mean, 15 into 150,000 is just 10 deals. That's a little under a deal a month. Close the deal per month in order to live your life in your authentic ideal. Well, now you can work out on terms of how much marketing you need to do, how many hours you need to work in order to create the leads, to create the prospects, to create the clients, to get the listings, and using that as an example. So again, there's tremendous power in having the plan and being crystal clear in the plan and being clear to the universe exactly how you want, exactly how much you want to generate in terms of dollars, and then what you're going to use those dollars for. Okay, and this is also, it becomes a very important discussion as we move into how big your battleship should be. So again, if you don't know what your lifestyle budget is, your personal lifestyle budget, as well as your business expense budgets, then you're a little bit stuck here, and you're going to be guessing and left with a lack of certainty and lack of clarity. And I can tell you that the universe rarely, might even say never, moves towards the confused mind, towards the uncertain or unclear mind. So having that clarity is absolutely crucial and crystal clear. Okay, so once you got the plan, now we can actually step into the physical realm. Okay, working past the quantum into the physical realm, where we can look at how you implement the plan. Okay, and I would definitely, number one piece here, we talked about delayed gratification a little earlier. It's the ability to live within your means. Okay, and we get into all kinds of issues as a coaching company here relative to self-worth and self-love and self-esteem and impulse buying, because people don't feel important enough, don't feel loved enough, don't feel there's lots of issues tied to this, you guys, okay? But the basic idea is, if you create a lifestyle budget that says, I'm budgeting this much for entertainment and this much for food and this much for heat and hydro and taxes and property taxes and my mortgage payment or rent payment or whatever. If you list this all out, and again, this is all laid out in our bliss sheet in terms of how to do this, you list that all out and it comes to, $5,000 a month. Well, then you should be working to get $5,000 a month into a vessel to receive, hopefully not an old shoe in the back of the closet, but actually like a savings account or a checking account in a bank, where you can then, as you pay your different lifestyle expenses that you've set, that you've determined, that you've said, this is my ideal life. As you do that, you just pull away from the $5,000. And the goal, obviously, at the end of the month is to live within your means. So that if you said I was going to cost me $5,000, well, then you know that it did, because you're actually tracking your expenses and you're staying and living within your means. Early on in my wife and I's transition into this stage of beingness with money, we literally did some work with a gentleman named Scott Stevenson, who had a thing called the Millionaire Minute. And what he did was he advocated that we would track, literally ask for a receipt for everything we bought. So you go to Starbucks for coffee and it's $2.50. It's like you ask for a receipt, right? And by tracking our intentional expenditures, we were able to get like crystal clear accuracy with our budget. And then if it wasn't our ideal, well, then we would say, well, how do we earn the right to live more in our ideal? Which again is, how do you provide more service to humanity? How do you sell more products or more services to humanity that the culture values in order to earn the right to live a more robust lifestyle? Living on credit, living on that borrowed energy, you guys, is something that's very common in our culture today. And I'm not suggesting that it's all negative or bad, that we're not having a moral discussion, but it comes with a consequence. And the consequence is that many people find it hard to build a financial battleship, which was really the topic for tonight, because they're living above their means. And they don't have the dollars at the end of the month to put into savings to build a battleship. And the next crisis comes, the car needs brakes and the roof needs to be done, or there's a crisis like there is now with a government mandated shutdown, or there's a downturn in the economy or whatever, and they're left scrambling. So again, in terms of having the courage to live according to your ideals and according to your plan, that's an absolutely crucial construct. And you must then also need a way to monitor or to know whether you in fact did live within your means, which is a related conversation. And again, one simple tip I would give you, which my wife and I did, we committed to this for 90 days, which Scott Stevens said it was probably how long you needed to build the habit. We liked the intentional control it gave us over our spending so much, we literally did it for a year and a half. Everything we bought, you should drive, the smaller purchases crazy. You buy a pack of gum at a corner store that asks for a receipt. And then we just had a system. We had an accordion file folder. We, stuck the receipts into the accordion file folder. And every month we'd add them up into the different categories. Yep, you know what? Our intention was to $600 in food, and we were $550. So celebrate that. We're on track. Again, after literally 18 months, we had such good understanding and had such intention around how we used the money, and weren't into impulse purchases and weren't into leveraging and working on credit and all of the stuff that a lot of people do, that we built our Battleship up really, really quickly. And we now would take, using my fictional example, $5,000. If $5,000 was our lifestyle budget, we would take $5,000 and put it into the account at the start of the month, and then we'd live off of that. And we made a commitment to each other that if we, weren't wise with how we used our money, and then we got to the end of the month, like 3 days before the end of the month, and there was no food in the cupboard, well, then we needed to be solid enough and courageous enough to go, you know what, that's on us. There's no one in this family who can't go a couple of days on reduced calories, and we'll just find a way to make it work. Now, thankfully, just like why we take umbrellas on a day that it might rain, so you never need it. We never had to do that. We never had to reach to the back of the cupboards, but that was a commitment we had to make to each other to make sure that we were serious about this, and we're willing to get very intentional and clear with our spending patterns, our investment patterns, for everything from literally savings, as I said at the top of the list, right down to lifestyle. By the way, if you don't know what big rocks are, there's a great big rock story, which if you're a client, you hopefully heard by now. But if not, definitely the big rocks, the idea behind the big rocks, are things that get you emotionally excited about life, that light your soul up. So they're not necessarily day-to-day lifestyle budget things. They are things that they don't have to cost anything. A big rock for me and my family for years is having dinner with my children, literally 360 days of the year. There's sports they couldn't play because it interfered with their dinner hour. My office hours were curtailed around our dinner hour. Lots of decisions, lifestyle decisions, were made around that important big rock. It didn't cost us necessarily anything outside of just what it would normally cost to have dinner. Versus, the other end of the spectrum, which were, exotic trips to Jamaica and private residences and that kind of stuff, right? So having a category for that and save for that, and then be able to have the courage to live within your means. So your intention was to take a trip to live in a Scottish castle for a week, and it was going to cost 50 grand, and you didn't save that much. Well, then, that's on you. Delayed gratification. Do it next year or the year after, and keep saving, towards that. Living outside of your means is the number one reason why people screw up finances. And again, why people live outside their means as a whole, outside of the confines of our discussion today, but I've definitely touched on a couple of points. And people say, well, yeah, but coach, does that mean that you say, I'm always have to live this meager lifestyle? You don't have to live a monastic or Mother Teresa type lifestyle at all. But instead of using it as a downer and oh, woe is me, use it as a stimulus to, light a fire under your butt and be wiser and smarter and more creative and more collaborative with how to increase the value and the productivity we talked about earlier in this conversation, the productivity of your product or service. So the more people want it, and you have earned the right, energetically speaking, to be in fair exchange for the money and the more robust lifestyle if you choose to do that. Okay. By the way, the reason savings is at the top of that list of 6 items is because if you do not put money into savings first, with the first dollar you make, when you're doing your distribution of dollars, there's a very high likelihood that you will never save any money whatsoever. And that's really the next piece, you guys, right, is to look at your battleship and how do you save for it, okay? And I would advocate that the size of your battleship is directly proportional to your monthly budgets. Let me say that again, okay? The size of your battleship, and you want a personal battleship and a professional battleship, or a business battleship, okay? And again, I'm obviously reflecting or talking to entrepreneurs here that are running their own businesses. If you're working for somebody else, this is a slightly varied conversation. You're probably there only looking at a personal battleship. But again, I want to talk to everybody here, so we'll talk about both personal and a business or professional. So really what you want to do is, let's just use round numbers. If it cost you, based upon the bliss sheet that I talked about and your ideal lifestyle, if it cost you $10,000 a month to live that, based upon your savings and big rocks and lifestyle and debt reduction and all those categories that we listed, if it costs you 10 grand a month, then what you want, your first target is to save 1 month, okay, 1 month worth of revenue or 1 month worth of dollars and to put into a savings account. I don't care if it gets interest or it doesn't get interest. It's the psychology that we talked about at the start of this conversation that you're really looking to assuage here, okay? Because what you want is when you have 30 days of operating capital to live on, you know that if the yogurt hits the rotary air device, you and your family are going to be fine for at least a month, okay? And I can tell you from historically, there aren't a lot of crises that last longer than a month. But in order to pad it a little bit, what we want to do is once you've got a month saved up of personal, then what you want to do is you want to save, if you have your own business, you want to save a month of operating expenses for your business, okay? And let's say that mystically, magically, and that also your average operating expense per month was $10,000 between your overhead costs to, turn the lights on, an air conditioner, heat the property, and the rental you pay, and your staff you pay, and the things you take to earn, the right to share your products and services with other people. Okay, so mysteriously, this costs 10 grand. So what you'd want is you'd want to save $10,000 worth of personal and then save $10,000 worth of business expenses. Keep them in a savings account. Doesn't matter if they earn interest, bonus if they do. You want it to be liquid. You want it to be easy accessible. You want to be able to lay your hands on that within a day max so that you've got that psychology. Once you've got 1 month, you work on two personal and then eventually 2 business and then ideally 3. So you've got 3 months. So in other words, you would have 30,000 worth of personal and 30,000 worth of business expenses saved in accounts that are easily accessible and easily liquidatable. At least 1 month of that needs to be accessible within 24 hours. Ideally, it all is, but at least 1 month of that is within 24 hours. So what about interest and what about inflation? I absolutely 100% would advocate that the benefits you get from having the clear mindset and not being stuck back in your limbic brain when a crisis comes up, and they will come up, is well worth the little bit of lost money relative to interest or inflation, okay? So a lot of times when people say, well, that sounds great, Tom, but how the hell do I do that? I haven't saved money in years, or I've saved very little. So this is what we call a forced accelerated savings plan, okay? And the idea behind a forced accelerated savings plan is to save for this financial battleship. As one of the things to be saving towards. Now there's kids education funds and there's your retirement fund and there's all of those other related conversations, which again, tonight we're just talking about financial battleship. We'll be covering those topics in other videos, and certainly we've got lots of writing and modules and so on around those topics. But tonight, financial battleship, savings for that. So, but this forced accelerated savings plans works for any savings. It's just whether you allocate it into your battleship funds or you allocate it into your kids education fund or your retirement fund or whatever. And there's, some psychology to the mix that you may choose to. Having a financial battleship, in my opinion, is primary. And so making sure that that's one of the, if not the highest priorities of saving towards, is really wise. So here's our 4-600 savings plan. Right now, you pick a number between $0, well, let's go, between $1 and infinity, that come hell or high water, you could save this year. Okay, on a monthly basis. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's $50 or $100 or $5,000 or what it is. It's push come to shove, you could put that amount of money into savings every month. That's your starting place. The 4-600 savings plan increases that number by 10 to 15% per quarter. So let's just say for round numbers, it was $100. So in Q1, whenever you're watching this, that quarter that you're in, your target would be, using my fictional numbers, $100. When you get to the end of that target in your bliss sheet, your planning sheet, you would then increase that to $110 or $115. The next quarter, you would increase that by, again, another 10 to 15%. So, let's just use easy numbers. You'd say that you went from 100 to 110, and then the next quarter, it would be 121. And the next quarter, 10% to 15% higher than that. So it would go up into, 133, and so on and so on. We have coached at Full Circle hundreds and hundreds, maybe now arguably thousands of entrepreneurs to use this system. I've seen people go from saving like literally $50 a month to saving thousands of dollars a month by doing this. Now there's a psychology to this. You must put the money into that savings category, into that savings account first. So when you're doing your monthly distribution, and if you're not doing a monthly distribution, know whether you're living on budget, you're already behind the 8 ball. So go back, rewind this video, rewatch some pieces of it to make sure that you understand how to do that monthly review, monthly distribution, monthly awareness of categorization of where money goes. But let's presume that you're doing that. This money goes out first, And the reason we set it up the way we did with savings being number one is because we want that to be first. Taxes are number two, then lifestyle, then big rocks, then debt reduction, and office costs are the last thing. What a lot of people tend to do is they pay their operating expenses or office costs first, and then they try and live on the scraps that are left over. What you're doing is you're saying unconsciously or psychologically, you're saying that everybody else is more important than you are. And I did this for many, many years. And it was so ingrained in me to just pay all your bills first and then try and live on what's left over instead of being intentional and conscious with the direction that we moved our energy and money, called money. It was absolutely a game changer mindset for me. And I've often told the story, but I mean, I literally wouldn't walk by a window for a couple of days because I thought God herself would strike me with a lightning bolt that I hadn't paid all of my business bills, but I paid myself first. And again, the story goes, we were $3,000 short to pay all of our category savings taxes as we laid out the very first month. My wife and I did this many, many decades ago. And we said, no, you know what? We're not going to not pay ourselves. We're just a few business bills we're not going to pay or not pay completely. Again, as I just said, I walked around windows for a couple of days. It was such a bizarre mindset, visceral thing for me. And the next month, we had a surplus. And take a wild guess what the surplus was? You're right, it was over $3,000. It was $3,414. And we were able to pay back the sort of the $3,000 from the month before. And as a result of making that commitment and having the courage to make a plan, follow the plan, and move forward with that, we literally have never had a deficit since. Been prepared for it, never had a deficit. But when you're going through the 4-600 savings plans, you're going to hit some mindset blocks. I remember very clearly when I got up to $500 a month, I was going into savings every month. That just seemed like a really big number. And I remember when I grew up and, when I went up beyond that to $1,000, and we had some months where it was a little iffy to be able to just put $1,000 into savings and then hit our targets on some of the other stuff, right? But I stuck to our guns. We put the 1,000 in and we trimmed our lifestyle a little bit and trimmed our big rocks a little bit and trimmed our debt reduction a little bit in order to, be able to maintain that. And the reward for that is my wife and I have gone from saving 0.5% of our revenue, which at that point was a smaller revenue than it is today, 0.5% of the smaller revenue to today we're saving upwards of 20% of a much higher revenue. So that 4-600 savings plans, I can't advocate for it enough. Game changer for me, game changer for hundreds if not thousands of clients, and it's a way to build your financial battleship. So thank you so much for your time and attention tonight, you guys. If you enjoy this video, I encourage you to rewind it, watch it, share it with friends. And if you're not already a subscriber to our YouTube channel, which is where this video will eventually end up, then I highly advocate that you go down below, subscribe, and you'll be getting more content-rich videos like this right into your inbox on a literally, not always on a daily basis, but definitely on a regular basis. So again, Dr. Tom signing off for tonight. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I look forward to interacting with you again real soon.
Our mission at Full Circle Coaching and Consulting is to awaken individuals to the power of authentic expression and help them realize their full potential, both personally and professionally. Without a cookie-cutter approach, we help you design and manifest your most authentic dream life, resulting in you earning more money and you having more time with your loved ones. You don't need to learn anything new in order to have the business and life you desire. You need to unlearn and shed all the unsupportive beliefs and behaviors that are subconsciously sabotaging your success. We help you connect with that factory-installed inner guidance and then reverse engineer the steps it takes to go from where you are to where your heart is calling you to be. This is our specialty. Let us help. When you're ready, connect with us through the links in the description below or go to our website at fullcirclecoachingandconsulting.com.